You know, if you've watched our shows over the years, Linder's Angling Edge, AnglingBuzz Ice, and even Lund's Ultimate Fishing Experience, you'll probably notice we have a lot of underwater fish footage in all our shows. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that we think it makes the shows more interesting to see fish in their own habitat. It's pretty cool to see what you're fishing for. And second of all, we think that it makes you a better angler seeing this kind of stuff, you know, what the fish are doing in the certain habitats that we find them in. Al Linder and Jeremy Smith are out trying to film an Angling Edge show right now, and we thought we'd come out, it was a nice day, and we would try to film some underwater walleyes when they're up shallow. We've been doing this now for, Bill's been doing it for more than 40 years, and I've been with him for 30, so we've been trying to capture fish underwater in their habitat the whole time, and it's interesting where it started out from and where it's come to. So right now you can see I got this big fancy underwater drone. Well, it wasn't like that 40 years ago. We had tape cameras. We finally got smaller tape cameras, and we had to buy a specific housing for them. And then Bill would actually put scuba gear on and dive and try to chase the fish doing that. Fast forwarded to that, we had some fancier pole cameras that we could lower in the water and record to a device on top. And then not long ago, GoPros came about, and they've proved to be really a boon to what we do just for filming everything, but they're really good. You know, you can put them on poles and look for fish that way too. But now if you go right to now, fast forward to the present, and we got this little guy here, and there's a number of them out there, but this is an underwater ROV, or I guess we call it an underwater drone, and it has changed the way that we've filmed fish underwater. No longer do we have to dive or put poles in the water. We can fly it around. I have it on a little remote here with my phone on it, and I control it just like I would fly an above water drone, air drone. And basically we just get out on spots where we know there's fish. We find fish with our graphs, or people are on fish, and we can just put this in the water and lower it down, and we can chase it around with the remote control and follow fish and capture footage. This device here has a 4K camera in it, so it takes really nice clear footage. And then it has an option to put a GoPro on top, which we've opted to do just because you never know if you know, the camera shuts off on you and you don't know, or something fails, or this gets a better angle or better light or what have you. So we've got it double recorded, and we've been getting some really neat stuff with it. Some really cool walleye stuff lately, some musky stuff, lots of bass and panfish. And it's been a really learning experience doing it. I think since we've been filming them, Bill and I have learned so much about what fish do and their behaviors by trying to film them underwater. And it's sort of interesting when you're down there with the fish, when we were diving, what they would do, but then flying this around, this isn't that big, but it's still a little bit intimidating, I would guess, to a fish. But it's amazing when you're around certain types of fish, they actually gravitate to this underwater ROV. It's especially bass. Bass and panfish are like super curious fish, and it doesn't matter where you are, what lake you're on, if it's clear, if they're there, they will find you. So you can be in an area where you think there might be bass, and if you have this down there long enough, you will find bass. They're just going to find it, and you know, you'll be filming one or two bass, either largemouth or smallmouth, and they'll be following the drone or with the drone, and then you'll stop for a minute because it almost feels like you're being followed, and you spin the drone around and oh, there's 4 more. And you spin the other way and there's 2 more. So all of a sudden you've got a group of 8 bass checking out the drone. So it's kind of interesting that way. I even had a incident one time on one of our local clear lakes where I was on a weed line looking for bass. I was seeing a few bass, a few sunfish. Pretty soon there's more bass. Turn around, there's a few more. Pretty soon I just kept going down the line. And I stopped and I spun the camera around looking, and I bet you I had 40 to 50 largemouth bass following the camera. It was just amazing. It just was this big pan spread of largemouth bass. So it was kind of a neat scene. Smallmouth are similar. They find you too. Panfish are as well. You know, bluegills will come and check you out, and it's pretty easy to get close to them with a camera to get footage, and they don't have to be on their beds. It's just even in open water. Crappies are a little more skittish, but you can still get them. And what we're doing now with the walleyes is a little more challenging. Walleyes are, you know, they're sort of a light sensitive fish for one, but they're a little spooky. So we've been able to capture some pretty nice footage of walleyes and schools of walleyes in various conditions, but you've only got a little bit of time with walleyes before they just say they've had enough and they bail on you. So they'll stick with you and you can kind of see them peeking back at you a little bit and then they bail out. So walleyes have always been our biggest challenge to get footage of walleyes underwater, whether it's, you know, on rocks or weeds or whatever. And then the most curious fish to us is the pike. Northern pike, you know, if you're an angler, you know how aggressive they are. They hit anything moving. But boy, you put a camera down in front of them and they just want nothing to do with you. I would say I can count on one hand how many really good images we've got of pike underwater. You see them in the distance, you try to sneak up on them and you're just sort of getting up to where you're like, oh boy, I'm gonna get a good shot of this pike, and then he just gets the heck out of Dodge. So it's interesting that they would be that way with how aggressive they are. Muskies are a little more user-friendly, but again, there's not as many of them, so they're a little harder to find. And but we've also not only done it in open water, but we've ran it through the ice too. So the last couple of years, it's been fun drilling a big hole in the ice, putting a tent over us and dropping this thing down, and it works amazingly well. There was one of the learning things we've seen with the camera under ice is if you're an ice angler, you know that you can go out ice fishing cut hundreds of holes and not find fish, and then all of a sudden, boom, you find all the fish. We've seen that with this underwater drone too, where you're in a spot where you think there's fish and you keep going and going and going. You're like, man, there's nothing here. And then all of a sudden, boom, all of a sudden there's fish everywhere. There's sunfish, bass, crappies, even walleyes mixed in, and they're just all in one zone. So it kind of shows you what you've learned already up above that. Like, you have to find where the fish are. They like to be in the wintertime. So, and we've also in the wintertime dropped them down on smallmouth bass. Now up here our way, smallmouth bass, in the wintertime they kind of congregate in big groups and they're active, but not as active as in the summer. They kind of stick in these wintering areas, they call them, for the, you know, most of the ice season. There was this big nothing flat of sand and 25, 26 feet of water. And then right in the middle of it was about a boat-sized area of boulders, and those bass were sitting on those boulders, and some were laying right on the bottom, and it looked like they were dead. They just were laying there, fins down, dark in color, and then there was others above them swimming around. So it was really interesting to see their behavior. So I guess the point I'm trying to make of all this is we've come a long way in being able to find and record fish, but I think the best part of it is, as an angler, knowing what these fish are doing underwater and seeing what they're doing under different conditions, different habitats, and how they're reacting to when you're around them is really a learning experience for you as an angler to know more about the fish you're chasing.